In the month of June 1852, incursions of Ferry's contact, Mr. Avery, a carpenter of Bayou Grove, commenced the erection of a house of Master Epps. It has previously been stated that there are no cellars on Bayou above. On the other hand, such is the low and swampy nature of the ground, the great houses are usually built open spiles. Another peculiarity is the rooms are not plastered, but the ceiling and sides are covered with matched cypress boards, painted such color as most please the owner's taste. Generally, the plank and boards are sewed by slaves with whip wats, there being no water power upon which miles might be built within many miles. When the planter erects for himself a dwelling, therefore, there is a plenty of extra work for his slaves. Having had some experience under Tibet as a carpenter, I was taken from the field altogether, on the arrival of Avery and his hands. Among them was one to whom I owe an immeasurable debt of gratitude. Only for him, in all probability, I should have ended my days in slavery. He was my deliverer, a man whose true heart overflowed with noble and generous emotions. To the last moment of my existence, I shall remember him with feelings of thankfulness. His name was Bass, and that time he resides in Marksville. It will be difficult to convey a correct impression of his appearance or character. He was a large man, between 40 and 50 years old, of light complexion and light hair. He was very cool and self-possessed, fond of argument, but always speaking with extreme deliberation. He was the kind of person whose peculiarity of manner was such that nothing he uttered ever gave offense. What would be intolerable, coming from the lips of another, could be said by him with impunity. There was not a man on the Red River, perhaps, that agreed with him on the subject of politics or religion, and not a man, I venture to say, who discussed either of those subjects half as much. It seemed to be taken for granted that he would espouse the unpopular side of every local question, and it would create amusement rather than displeasure among his auditors, to listen to the ingenious and original manner in which he maintained the controversy. He was a bachelor, an old bachelor, according to the true acception of them, having no kindred living, as he know of in the world, neither had he any permanent abiding place, wandering from one state to another, as his fancy dictated. He had lived in Marksville 3 or 4 years, and in the prosecution of this business as a carpenter, and in consequence likewise of his peculiarities, was quite extensively known throughout the parish of Abolis. He was liberal to a fault, and his many acts of kindness and transparent goodness of heart rendered him popular in the community, the sentiment of which he unsingly combated. He was native of Canada, from whence he had wandered in early life, and after visiting all the principal localities in the northern west and western states, in the courses of his peregrinations, arriving in the unhealthy region of the Red River, his last removal was from Illinois, whither he has now gone. I regret to be obliged to say is unknown to me. He gathered up his effects and departed quietly from Maxville the day before I did, the suspicions of his instrumentality in procuring my liberation rendering such a step necessary. For the commission of a just and righteous act he would undoubtedly have suffered death, as he had remained within reach of the slave-whipping tribe on Bayou Buff. One day, while working on the new house, Bass and Epps became engaged in a controversy, to which, as will be readily supposed, I listened with absorbing interest. They were discussing the subject of slavery. I tell you what it is, Epps, said Bass. It is all wrong, all wrong. Sir, there's no justice, no right, 'tis not in it. I I wouldn't own a slave if I was rich as Croesus, which I am not. As is perfectly well understood, more particularly among my creditors, there's another humbug, the credit system. Humbug, sir. No credit, no debt. Credit leads a mean into the pension. Cash downs is the only thing that will deliver him from devil. But his question is of slavery. What's right have to your niggers when you come down to the point? What right? Said Epps. Loading? Why, I bought them and paid for them. Of course you did. The laws say you have the right to hold a nigger, but begging the law's pardon, it lies. Yes, Epps. When the law says that it's a liar, and the truth is not in it, is very thing right because the law allows it? Suppose they have allowed taking away your liberty and making you a slave. Oh, that is a supposable case, said Epps, still logging. Hope you don't compare me to a nigger, Bass. Well, Bass answered gravely, no, not exactly, but I have seen niggers before know as good as I am, and I have no acquaintance with any white man in these parts that I consider a whit better than myself. Now, in the sight of God, what is the difference, Epps, between a white man and a black one? All the difference in the world, replied Epps. You might as well ask what the difference is between a white man and a baboon. Now I've seen one of them critters in Orleans that known just as much as a nigger. I've got you call them fellow citizens, I suppose, and Epps indulged in a loud laugh at his own wit. Look here, Epps, continued his comparison. You can lock me down in it that way. Some men are whitey, and some whitey as they think they are. Now let me ask you a question. Are all men created free and equal as the Declaration of Independence holds they are? Yes, responded Epps. But all men, niggers and monkey ain't. And here he broke forth into a more boisterous laugh than before. There are monkeys among white people as well as black, when you come to that. Coolly remarked Bass. I know some white men that use argument no sensible monkey would, but let that pass. These niggers are human beings. If they don't know as much as their masters, whose fault is it? They are not allowed to know anything. You have books and papers, and can go where you please, and get your intelligence in a thousand ways. But your slaves have no privilege. You whip one of them in code reading book. They are held in bondage, generation after generation, deliberate of mental improvement. And who can expect them to possess much knowledge? If they are not brought down to a level with the brute creation, you slaveholders will never be blamed for it. If they are baboons or stand no higher in the scale of intelligence than such animals, you and men like you will have to answer for it. There is a sin, a fearful sin, resting on this nation, that will not go unpunished forever. There will be reckoning yet. Yes, Epps, there's a day coming that will burn us an oven. It may be sooner or it may be later, but it's coming as sure as the Lord is just. If you live up among the Yankees in New England, said Epps, I expect you of one of the cursed fantastic that know more than the Constitution, and go about painting clocks and coaching niggers to run away. If I was in New England, returned Bass, I would be just what I'm here. I would say that slavery was an iniquity and ought to be abolished. I would say there was no reason nor justice in the law or constitution that allows one man to hold another man in bondage. It would be hard for you. You have no more right to your freedom, in exact justice, than Uncle Abraham yonder. Talk about black sin and black food. Why, how many slabs are there on this bayou as white is either of us? And what difference is there in the color of the soul? Psha! The whole system is an absurd as it's cruel. You may own niggers and be hanged, but it wouldn't own one for the best plantation in Louisiana. You like to hear yourself talk, Bass, better than any man I know. You would argue that black was white or what black. If anybody would contradict you, nothing suits you in this world, and I don't believe you will be satisfied with the next. If you should have your choice in them, conversations substantially like the following were to not unusual between the two after this, Eves drawing him out more of the purpose of creating a love at his expense, that with a view of fairly discussing the merits of the question. He looked upon Bass as a man ready to say anything merely, for the pleasure of hearing his own voice, a somewhat self-conceit, perhaps contending against his faith and judgment, in order simply to exhibit and exaggerate in argumentation. He remained at depth through the summer visit Marksville, generally once a fortnight. The more I saw of him, the more I became convinced he was a man in warn I could confide in. Nevertheless, my previous ill fortune had taught me to bear extreme occasions. It was not my place to speak to a white man except what spoken to, but I had no opportunity of throwing myself in his way, and endeavored constantly in every possible manner to attract his attention. In the early part of August, he and myself were at work alone in the house, the other patrons having left, and Epps being absent in the field. Now was the time, if ever, to broach the subject, and he resolved to do it, and submit to whatever consequence might ensue. We were busily at work in the afternoon, when I stopped suddenly and said, Master Bass, I want to ask you what part of the country you came from. Why, Platt, what you that into your head? He answered, you wouldn't know if I should tell you. After a moment or two, he added, I was born in Canada. Now guess where that is. Oh, I know where Canada is, said. I have been there myself. Yes, I expect you were all acclimated all through that country, he remarked, laughing incredulously. As sure as I live, Master Bass, I replied. I have been there. I have been in Montreal and Kingston and Queenston and a great many places in Canada, and I have been in York State too, in Buffalo and Rochester and Albany, and can tell you the names of the village of the Erie Canal and the Champlain Canal. Buzz turned around and gazed at me along with time without uttering a syllable. How came you here? He inquired. At length, Master Buzz, I answered. If justice had been done, I never would have been here. Well, how is this? Said he. Who are you? You have been in Canada, sure? And now I all the places you mentioned. How did you happen to get here? Come, tell me about it. I have no friends here, was my reply, that I can put confidence in. I am afraid to tell you. Though I don't believe you will tell Master Epps if should. He assured me earnestly he would keep every word I might speak to him a profound secret, and his curiosity was evidently strongly excited. It was a long story, I informed him, and would take some time to relate it. Master Epps would be back soon, but if he would meet that night after all were asleep, I would repeat it to him. He consented readily to the arrangement, and directed me to the come into the building where we were at the work. After further assurance on his part that it should not be betrayed, I began a relationship of the story of my life and misfortunes. He was deeply interested, asking numerous questions in reference to locations and events. Having ended my story, I besought him to write some of my friends and the North. After this time we seldom spoke to or recognized each other. He was, moreover, less free in his conversation with Epps on the subject of slavery. The remotest suspicion that there was any unusual intimacy, any secret understanding between us, never once entered the mind of Epps, or any other person, white or black, on the plantation. The Saturday night sustained to our interview at the water's edge. Bus home to Marksville to the next day, being Sunday. He employed himself is in own room writing letters. One he directed to the collector of custom in New York, another to Judge Marvin, another to Mess, Parker, and Perry jointly. The letter was the one which led to my recovery. He described my true name, but in postscript I intimate I was not the writer. The letter itself shows that that he considered himself engaged in a dangerous undertaking, no less than running the risk of his life if detected. I did not see the letter before it was mailed, but have since obtained a copy. At the end of 4 weeks he was again at Markville, but no answer had arrived. I was sorely disappointed. So wholly was I absorbed in reflecting upon my situation and prospects, that he ants with whom I labored in the field often observed it. Patsy would ask me if I was sick, and Uncle Abraham and Bob and Wiley frequently expressed a curiosity to know what I could be thinking about too steadily. But I evade their inquiries with some light remark, and keep my thoughts locked closely in my breast.